Welcome to BuildForce Canada's Productivity Series. Each episode will focus on one aspect of productivity. We hope you'll find them informative and useful as we all strive to improve our competitiveness. Remember, how we work is how we win.
Our thanks to BuildForce Canada for the opportunity to share some of the work and learning around the topic of productivity. Go Productivity is a not-for-profit organization supporting small and medium-sized businesses, including small and medium-sized construction firms, to help them learn to grow and optimize. We help SMEs become productivity experts. We help them to learn how to improve performance with better utilization of their people and their resources. So today we'll explore an introduction to the topic of productivity and dig down into the true factors that can predict and improve an organization's performance and productivity. What I'd like to cover in this session is a little bit about Go Productivity, but more importantly, what is productivity and how do we measure it? Looking at some of the conventional productivity metrics around lagging indicators and leading indicators, and then dig a little bit deeper into investment in human capital as a better leading indicator, and finally, a little bit around implications for advancing economic productivity. So we began as Productivity Alberta and were founded in 2008 as a service of the Government of Alberta to help the province's small and medium-sized enterprises be more productive, more competitive, and more profitable. In October 2011, Productivity Alberta grew into Go Productivity, a private, national, not-for-profit corporation. We're industry board-led, and we exist to guide and strive towards operational excellence, developing a culture of innovation, and building leaders for the future success of our small and medium-sized businesses. We want to enhance the competitiveness of our clients through thought leadership, training, and applied learning, and by providing advisory services to build capacity and capability within our organizations. Our advisory approach focuses on identifying opportunities through an education and assessment process, developing a roadmap of next steps, a plan, and coaching the business or organization to support the execution of that plan. Essentially, it's where are you now and where do you want to be to begin to tackle your productivity challenges and opportunities, and how do we ensure that you get there? We have a range of programming that can pull from, depending on the needs of each business or organization, a very customized approach stemming out of the assessment and roadmap process. So let's start first by what we mean by the term productivity. Productivity is a commonly used word today, but let's start with its truest definition, a simple formula. Essentially, productivity equals output for the level of input. Output can be products sold, tasks completed, tons of steel erected. Input can be person hours, dollars, or time. And international measures look at the output per employee. So how do we use this productivity formula? Let's start with two general levels as an example. Level one is what we call little p productivity. It's productivity equals output divided by input at the individual level. So that would be tons of steel erected per person hour. Level two, big P productivity, is at the system level. It's looking at the company's output and is it at an acceptable level compared to others. It's equivalent to measuring competitiveness. And an example here is the federal government labor productivity index, where they measure labor productivity equaling GDP, which is our gross domestic product, divided by total hours worked. This productivity framework breaks down the components of productivity in a more meaningful way. Our prosperity, measured by GDP per capita, equals our labor effort times our productivity. So more simply put, to increase productivity, you can either increase your labor effort, and Canada has done quite well in the labor side at this point, or you can increase productivity. Sources of productivity growth come from either adding value in the products, processes, or services we provide, or through efficiency gains through productivity enhancement. We need to focus on both of these aspects. And then further, the drivers of productivity are boiled down to these 7 main areas: skilled workers and strong management capability, scientific engineering talent, innovation, investment in capital, including investment in information, communication, and technology systems, and in automation through machinery and equipment. And other drivers are competition, business and policy environment, and trade. When we think about productivity, we also go to productivity and process improvements. We often forget to consider the people part of the equation. Now let's talk about how we measure the people part of the equation. There continues to be challenges on how to measure this, when to measure, and what to measure, advantages and disadvantages of doing it in different ways. So we're going to talk about a couple of these. Let's start with lagging indicators. And historically, the government collects this data to find out how well an economy is performing. They measure the number of new jobs, new markets, and overall sales increases. There are some issues with measuring in this way. Let me give you a simple story maybe to help understand this a little bit better. It can often take a company a year of discernment before they realize that there's an opportunity to streamline their processes. They make the process changes, celebrate the win, and communicate to their clients that they can do it better and faster. But they didn't hire anyone new, and they didn't enter into any new markets. Eventually, once the customers catch on that this company can perform better and faster, they start buying more. So eventually sales will go up, and eventually, in a couple of years, the company will grow and hire more people. So when the productivity improvement occurs, it takes a couple of years before these measures show that there was anything actually happening. This is one of our recent case studies on productivity improvement project, and not going into a lot of detail, but let me highlight the scenario. Their challenge was struggling to keep up with customer demand, difficulty with effective scheduling, and excessive defect rates, costing them money and impacting their schedules and capacity. There was a focus to really look at their leadership, defining who they wanted to be and establishing that long-term vision, really developing a strategy now, and they conducted a customer analysis and focused on the customer strategy with vision, and then started to utilize various tactics and tools to identify and implement process improvements. The project was conducted over a year and a half, and it achieved some great wins. But would the lagging indicators make these efforts visible? New hires, new markets, increase in sales? Not immediately. But if we look at the metrics of what they did achieve, it was $900,000 in net profit that they realized through productivity improvements, and it set a plan for further focus on deficit reduction, a defect reduction that will continue to see additional savings and grow their profit line into the future. If we look at leading indicators, such as investment in research and development or investment in new capital equipment, we see that our case study company did to improve. They did some R&D, and at the company level, we can anticipate sales growth by looking at it as if we're investing in training and cultivating and implementing innovative ideas and doing the research to back it up. A current metric that uses leading indicators is used by the Global Competitiveness Ratings. The Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils includes such factors as R&D spending and innovation to gauge how productive an entire country or nation is. One of the key elements going into the very beginning of a step of productive improvement is our people. Let's look at how investing in our people could be the foundational leading indicator. In order to get better at measuring productivity, which ultimately is done so that we can improve productivity, we must know the metrics, choose which ones are best, and understand the value and limitations of each one and when to implement. And let's look further into what the people part of this equation means to productivity, which ultimately leads to competitiveness. This is a relatively new field of research, looking at pairing Maslow's hierarchy of needs with business productivity theory. The premise is that by investing in human capital, your people, it will lead to stronger leadership and management performance. It will then lead further into deeper capital investment and innovation. It'll move even further into areas of operational excellence and ultimately economic competitiveness. There's also complexity around how to measure human capital, but it's easy to start measuring within your own company and benchmark against yourself. And in the side column, you'll see some samples of what can be measured at each level. So back to the human capital area, training hours, distinct content offerings, certifications, moving up into employee turnover, ideas generated, strategic goal achievement, again further into products launched, patents filed, return on investment, and then deeper into inventory turns, order lead time, cost of goods sold, and ultimately job creation, revenue growth, and market expansion. If we wanted to look at implementing the industry hierarchy of metrics, this is what you would use, and it's kind of what we've learned to walk through other companies. So let's look at this productivity journey. First of all, there's awareness of leading practices in productivity, that educational component. And then it's looking at the gap between the current and desired future. Then, targeting the current state, assessment is completed, moving into identifying opportunities and prioritizing those opportunities, then shaping the initiative and planning, ultimately into implementing the initiative and looking at the improvements realized. It's really important to put targets in place throughout this process for people, the process and technologies, and we often forget to consider the people part of this equation. So we need to include measuring and finding gaps in our skills and knowledge, as well as process performance factors and technology. And this is how the leading and lagging indicators fall into the timeline that you'll see at the bottom. Now let's look at what happens when we start to invest in our people. So looking at measuring human capital investment, what are the steps that we can look at? First of all, starting with the what. So starting by the foundational productivity and education throughout the organization. Then you can start on the where, which is focused productivity assessments, looking at where to improve and how to coach those improvements. Continued education on productivity training, now deeper, specific, topical. And then to focus more intently on the ideas. How do we develop formal innovation structures and processes? Ultimately, then, to sustain through operational excellence and process improvement initiatives. And you can actually measure those through hours invested in productivity assessments, hours of productivity coaching, hours invested in productivity training, hours invested in development of formal innovation structures, and even hours invested in continuous improvement initiatives. There's some key messages that you want to address as you're talking amongst your leadership teams and starting to message throughout the opportunity to change culture within the organization. And the first is the why. It's because when you invest in your staff, ultimately it leads to higher productivity and innovation, overall competitiveness. One business owner was overheard to say, "What if we invest in them and they leave?" And another business owner replied, "But what if you don't invest in them and they stay? What impact can that have on your business?" So what does it take? You need to change priorities for the company to focus on its people. You need to encourage the culture to reduce turnover and increase job satisfaction. And include this specifically in strategic plans and budget for investments in people, so both time and costs. And then conduct training, allow time for innovation activities, look for opportunities and gaps again, and repeat the cycle. Ultimately, if you invest in human capital, your leadership will improve, your investments will be implemented better, operations will run much more smoothly, and you'll gain more rapport and more business, and the whole process multiplies over and over. For one small dollar of time spent training and supporting your people, you could be looking at huge competitive advantage. Investing in human capital may feel like a leap of faith, but our experiences tell us that top leading companies, such as Fortune 500s, are making this a priority and seeing great successes. Forbes magazine stated, Empowering your workforce to go beyond expectations will encourage innovative ideas that will make a great difference and improve value to the customers and clients. The Learning Wave in the United Kingdom said, a quote about them said, "Igniting potential in organizations' most important asset, its people, is the real key to productivity," according to the country's most innovative learning provider, Learning Wave. They see positive impacts to bottom lines as a direct result of investing in upscaling their staff. At Go Productivity, we believe that the key to higher levels of productivity and innovation and its real impact on business or any organization is directly linked to its investment in human capital. This means investing back into your people. This includes training and learning, collaborative brainstorming and planning, and collective problem solving. We truly believe that your people are your greatest resource and asset and your highest return on your investment. Thank you so much for your time today.
For more information and to watch the rest of our webinars, go to buildforce.ca.